We've made it almost all the way through bowl games, and now we're to the New Year's Six. We're to the games against the best teams in the country, or at least the biggest names in the country, and the ones that are going to be really exciting. Today, we watched Georgia in a dominating blowout. We watched Auburn get crushed, but we made a few videos last week. We gave you our picks, and we both ended up positive from those.
Yeah, combined 16-7 across our last three videos. If you've been following our picks, you've been winning all season long, and that doesn't stop in the bowl games. And guess what? It's not going to stop through these playoff games.
Well, we're going to start by talking about Alabama and Michigan. This is a bowl game that I would think everyone's looking forward to. I live in LA. I've been walking around at all the hot spots, and I see Alabama and Michigan guys everywhere. I saw some Alabama players yesterday. This is going to be an exciting one. I unfortunately won't be in town for this game. I'll be watching from Phoenix since I'll be at the Fiesta Bowl. But I want to talk about what the key matchup is for Michigan and how you think they're going to take advantage of that against Bama.
Yeah, to me, the key matchup in this game is going to be the Alabama run game versus the Michigan run defense. Michigan's had one of the strongest defenses in the entire country this season. They were the number 2 defense in defensive yards allowed, number 1 in points allowed. So this has been a team that's been absolutely nasty. But you look at the Big Ten and you say, were they nasty or were they just going against a weak conference in a down year? I mean, Ohio State, their number 1 rival, their number 1 foe, the number 1 ranked team in the Big Ten besides them. Look what they did in their bowl game against Mizzou. 3 points. They were absolutely horrible. Even outside of that, they weren't anything particularly special during the regular season, to the point that their starting quarterback, Kyle McCord, announced he's going to transfer and went from Ohio State to Syracuse. That's a transfer down if I've ever heard. Meanwhile, Penn State, they got destroyed by Ole Miss today. So, you look at Michigan and their wins are getting a little bit less impressive with bowl season. I don't want to put too much, evidence and factor into bowl season because, again, Ohio State had a lot of opt-outs. Penn State had a lot of opt-outs. But still, is Michigan's defense for real? And if they are, is Bama going to be able to get the yards on the ground to match up?
Well, look, I know you don't want to put in emphasis on the bowl games and these other teams who are playing because you've got opt-outs, you've got so many different factors that go into it. But here's the reality. Missouri beat Ohio State, and they beat them pretty convincingly. Ole Miss crushed Penn State when they were a 5 or 6 point dog leading up to kickoff. Georgia obviously came out and showed who they are, and I'm not going to lie to you, Jake, I really liked Michigan this week. Leading up, I've thought, man, Michigan being the favorite, it doesn't make much sense. Obviously, they want to get payback since they've lost 2 playoff games in a row now, and they want their chance at the national championship. This potentially could be Jim Harbaugh's last hurrah before he goes to the NFL. But Bama beat Georgia, and today Georgia looked like the best team, or at least the best program in college football, and I don't think many people are going to argue that. Did today sway your opinion at all on how this game's going to go, or were you already leaning one way and you're not going to change your move?
I wouldn't even say I was leaning one way before I decided to sit down and do a lot of research and preparation for this video. I thought this game was actually one of the most difficult ones to pick just off the top. But Georgia did not really change my mind today because Florida State was basically Tallahassee Community College today. I mean, they had nobody playing in that game. It was just kind of sad to watch. I mean, I understand that they would have had a lot more people playing if they made the playoffs, but I mean, this is exactly the reason why they didn't make it, because the talent on the team is just lacking. You would think that the backups even be able to get 1 touchdown. Georgia played backups the entire second half. They still couldn't get any points. That being said, Georgia was only able to score 24 points on Alabama, which I say only, but Alabama was not the defensive juggernaut that they've been in years past. They gave up 24 to Auburn as well, 28 to LSU, 34 to Texas. Now, these are all good teams, and some could argue hey, only giving up 28 points to the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels, is a very good result. But Michigan was the number 10 team in the country in points. They averaged over 36 points a game. Alabama, their offensive line, also not as impressive as they've been in years past. They were the number 4 worst team in the country this year in sack percentage. They got sacked every 13% of the pass plays. Now, granted, some of this is skewed because I think it counts every Jalen Milroe negative rush as that. But still, I mean, Alabama runs the ball at 60%. So if the offensive line is not getting pushed against the Michigan defensive line, that's a huge problem. Georgia, even though Alabama won that game, Georgia was still able to get a 15% sack rate against Milroe.
I saw
Alabama only had a 4% sack rate last year, for example, with Bryce Young. I know they're different styles, but I think that's a big indictment on the offensive line.
I saw that both of these quarterbacks are great at extending the play, and I think we watched that all year. 2 guys who can move the ball downfield, and they can create chunk plays because they get outside and they make sure that there's some option, even if that first one isn't there. But here's the thing. there's a totally different conversation when it comes to experience on the field. You've got Alabama, who's only starting 6 upperclassmen on offense and 5 on defense. And their depth's younger too. The depth is all guys who are lower classmen or underclassmen. And these are guys who haven't been to the playoffs. They haven't been in, they've been in big games, but they haven't been in situations like this yet. Whereas Michigan, who's starting 10 upperclassmen on offense and 8 on defense, they're extremely ready to go. They've seen this movie before, and they're pissed off because they've gotten so close in the past. I mean, look at last year with TCU. I think that was like a 100-point total finish. Michigan put up did they put up over 50 points? It came down to the very end. I think TCU won 55-50, somewhere in that range. But because they got that taste, like they could do it, they belonged there, and they've done it twice now, they're going to feel like this is their chance to finally get it done. And I think because of that, I lean with Michigan in terms of experience and in terms of we know how to do it because we've played in this spot.
Well, in terms of experience, there's no doubt that Alabama's got the advantage at the coach. Nick Saban has been to the playoffs many times. He's won the championship many times. Jim Harbaugh, while he has had a lot of success in the regular season, has had 0 playoff success, both in the NFL and college. Yes, he lost in the Super Bowl, and that counts as a failure in my eyes, because Jim Harbaugh's a bum.
But wait, do you know the actual numbers for Saban versus Michigan in bowl games or playoff games?
Does that count his time at Michigan State?
No, we'll just talk about Michigan. Michigan 1-6 under Harbaugh in bowl games, 0-2 in the playoffs. Saban, just at Bama, was 9-4 in playoff games, so they don't lose those, like you said.
Right, and as we talked about in the Bama versus Georgia game, if you want to go back to our last video talking about the stats for that, they don't lose as an underdog either. So, there's a lot of factors that go into this game. As I said, this is one of the most difficult ones to pick. Again, we can talk about the coaching. Who do I trust more? It's definitely Nick Saban. You give them both a month to prepare. But if you look at the team on the field, I think I'm trusting Michigan's defense a little bit more. I'm not trusting Alabama's offensive line as much. And I think Michigan might end up controlling this game in the trenches. They were 8th in the country in time of possession, and if they can impose their will in the trenches, I expect them to win this game.
Well, what do you think about this line? Right now it sits at +2 on BroThrow. By the way, if you want to bet on any of the games that we talk about in our videos, you can sign up from any state in the US to play for free with no vig, which means when you bet 25 or bet 50, you win 25 or 50. You don't pay that 10% fee that you would pay on a sports book or any of these apps out there. If you want to sign up to try it, you can click the link in the description box below. It's brothrow.com/YouTube, and that's where Jake and I make all of our bets. You can get spreads, totals for +100 odds, money lines for better odds than you'll find anywhere out there. But Jake, going back, do you think this line is going to move? Well, is it time to make the play now? I mean, I've gotten jammed on so many games this bowl season because the swings have been 3, 4, 5, up to 6 or 7 points. And I'm sitting there like, wow, I took Missouri at -2, but I could have gotten them at +6.
100%. The swings in the lines have been volatile, to say the least. Even if you go back and look at our games from the last video that we recorded, I believe that we had Georgia as like a 14-point favorite at the time. It closed at 23.5. So I know Tate Rodemaker opted out after we recorded the video, but he's not worth 9.5 points, that's for sure. So these lines can definitely swing a lot. The interesting thing about this line is it did swing a lot because it opened, I believe, at Michigan -3, and the public slammed Alabama hard, and it dropped down to 1.5, and every single time the line has bounced down to a pick 'em, or maybe minus a half point. The sharps have jumped all over Michigan to the point that the books are pushing it back up. If you look at the handle, Alabama is definitely getting the majority of the money and the majority of the bets. You'd think that how it's been, that Bama would be the favorite at this point in time. Especially, the books know that the public loves to bet on Saban as a dog. I think, that's a telling factor. We like to talk about the line reads, and right now my line read intuition is pointing towards Mich.
So what's your play at +2?
It's tough. It's really tough. And I hate to do it. I hate to bet against Saban, but I think I'm going to go with Michigan in this spot. I think their running game is too strong. Their offensive line, defensive line is too strong. And I'm a believer in their defense. I think that they've gone against some tough teams in the Big Ten. I think it's better than, I gave them credit for earlier in the video. I'm not going to, take the bowl games too seriously. And I think that Michigan has proven over the course of not just this season, but the last couple of seasons that they're a really dominant defensive team. This is a team that's lost back-to-back times in the first round of the playoffs. They got to get it done this year. The number 1 seed. If they don't get it done now, when are they going to get it done? How many more chances are they going to give Harbaugh to lose in the playoffs? So I feel like this year it's all in for Michigan. I mean, they're doing crazy things to not win. They're not even looking at the iPads. They're not taking team photos. It's just completely absurd, some of the stories that are happening. But, absurdity kind of favors Harbaugh. So
it's interesting because, like you said, at +2 with Alabama. Everything screams to take them. But then I talked earlier about the upperclassmen situation at Michigan, and you just mentioned that this is kind of the last chance moment for them to get it done. I think I'm still going to ride Saban. I'm going to take the team who knows how to beat the best teams in the country. I know Michigan had, I don't want to say a tumultuous schedule because it wasn't. The Big Ten was very mid this year. They beat Maryland, they beat Penn State, beat Ohio State, but honestly, none of those were Georgia. Georgia is the strongest team in the country. I think because Alabama showed that they can overcome and win in a scenario where they're not supposed to. What was Bama? A 6-point dog in that game. They still found a way to get it done, and they looked impressive doing it. I'm riding with Saban because in the past, I've gone against him. Last year, I went against him when they played in Dallas against Kansas State. I don't remember what bowl game that was, but they played Kansas State. I think it was Cotton Bowl. They ended up running away with it. And I thought to myself, I'm never betting against Saban in a spot like this again. And this spot's even more meaningful than last year's was. So although they're young and although I like Michigan more, and I think Michigan probably has the more talented team overall, I'm riding Bama +2. I'm riding Bama on the money line. And I'm going to take the over in this game.
Yeah, I like the over too. Michigan's offense number 10 in the country in scoring. I think Bama's going to be able to keep with them. 44.5 just feels too low for these teams. I mean, again, the Georgia game was at 51. The Michigan-Ohio State game was at 54. These teams can score points.
All right, Jake. Well, I'll see you in the Texas-Washington pick'em. I'm excited for these games because now we're in the most meaningful part of the bowl season. We're in our final 4-team playoff and our final chance to probably see Harbaugh get one done.
Last meaningful games of the year, the games with no opt-outs, except for Malik Murphy, but very excited for these playoff games. Let's see some great, instant classics. I think we might get some absolutely bomb games this year.
All right, I'll see you soon.